I wanted to point out something that I found a little bit interesting here. You know, back a little while ago when we were reading in Breaking Israel News, and actually it was printed on Facebook and other news sources in Israel. Now this came from the rabbis who had calculated Donald Trump's name, and they said Donald Trump equals 424, and 424 also equals the name Messiah, son of David. Of course, they said that he's not the Messiah, but he is preparing the way for the Messiah to come. And since they said that his name equals the same as Messiah, son of David, it's interesting that something happened at the rallies between the person whose name is B and Trump. That was something that I noticed in the newspapers. Every time Donald Trump would have a rally, it would always say he had tens of thousands at his rallies. But when you would read about B's rallies, it would always just say there were thousands at his rallies. And that is something extraordinary having to do with King David and King Saul. So it's interesting that Donald Trump's name is connected to King David in that way. The comparison is kind of extraordinary to 1 Samuel chapter 18. It starts in verse 5, and the title is Saul Envies David. And it says, "And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistines, that the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet King Saul, with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day and forward. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David, even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. And Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with him, and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him, and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. So the number given to Saul was the thousands, and to David was the 10,000s, or tens of thousands. Now, it's also in 1 Samuel 21, starting in verse 8. And David said unto Ahimelech, And is there not here under thine hand spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here, wrapped in a cloth, behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, There is none like that. Give it to me. And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, Is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. And he changed his behavior before them, and feigned himself mad in their hands, and scrabbled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down on his beard. Then said Achish to his servants, Lo, ye see the man is mad. Wherefore then have ye brought him to me? Have I need of madmen, that ye have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? Now one last one is 1 Samuel 29, verse 1. Now the Philistines gathered together all their armies to Aphek, and the Israelites pitched by a fountain, which is in Jezreel. And the lords of the Philistines passed on by hundreds and by thousands. But David and his men passed on in the reward with Achish. Then said the princes of the Philistines, What do these Hebrews here? And Achish said unto the princes of the Philistines, Is not this David, the servant of Saul, the king of Israel, which hath been with me these days, or these years? And I have found no fault in him, since he fell unto me unto this day. And the princes of the Philistines were wroth with him. And the princes of the Philistines said unto him, Make this fellow return, that he may go again to his place, which thou hast appointed him, and let him not go with us to battle, lest in the battle he be an adversary to us. For wherewith should he reconcile himself unto his master? Should it not be with the heads of these men? Is not this David, of whom they sang one to another in dance, saying, Saul slew his thousands, and David his 10,000s? Then Achish called David and said unto him, Surely as the Lord liveth, thou hast been upright, and thy going out and thy coming in with me in the host is good in my sight. For I have not found evil in thee since the day of thy coming unto me unto this day. Nevertheless the Lord's favour thee not. Wherefore now return and go in peace, that thou displease not the lords of the Philistines. And David said unto Achish, But what have I done? And what hast thou found in thy servant so long as I have been with thee unto this day, that I may not go fight against the enemies of my lord the king? And Achish answered and said to David, I know that thou art good in my sight, as an angel of God. Notwithstanding the princes of the Philistines have said, He shall not go up with us to the battle. Wherefore, now rise up early in the morning with thy master's servants that are come with thee, and as soon as ye be up early in the morning, and have light, depart. So David and his men rose up early to depart in the morning, to return into the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. So isn't it interesting that the rabbis in Israel compared Donald Trump in Gematria with Messiah, the son of David, even though they said he's not the Messiah, but his name calculates to the same number in Gematria. And then there was a discrepancy about that number, but it depends on which words you translate into the Gematria. But Donald Trump is supposed to be 424, and translate Messiah, son of David, because that's what Messiah, son of David translates to, too, is 424. And so here you have the one who ran on the Democrat ticket. He's always having just thousands at his rallies. But every time you see Donald Trump rallies, it says he has tens of thousands. And it's just like Saul and David. I just think that that is really remarkable. So now let me read some of the headlines that happened during the rallies with this election. And this one, and I'll just call him JB so I don't get censored. It says, JB is the front runner by every measure except big crowds. B draws thousands to Kansas City rally. Thousands take to streets of U.S. in celebration of B victory. And then this one says, both candidates agree Donald Trump's crowds are bigger than JB's, and they're okay with that. Then we had a YouTube video from ITV News that was titled, Tens of Thousands of Hardline Donald Trump Supporters Rally. And then we have an ITV News video on YouTube titled, Tens of Thousands of Hardline Donald Trump Supporters Rally. Then on November 16th, 2020, from nationalobserver.com, there was one article titled, Tens of Thousands of Trump Supporters Flood Downtown D.C. to Show Solidarity. After that, we have newjersey.news12.com. This one is titled, Tens of Thousands of People Arrive in Wildwood for President Trump Rally. And then the last one I'll say, thousands rally in LA's Pershing Square to celebrate B and H. So that's just something I observed every time I was seeing these articles, that every time it referred to the candidate B, it was always saying he had his thousands. But every time it talked about Trump rallies, it was saying he has his 10,000s. And it just was so much like Saul and David. And anyway, to sum it up, it just kind of ties that whole thing about the number of Trump's name equaling son of David, and, that he has this similarity with David, and also the fact that, David wasn't afraid to come up against the giant Goliath, and he wasn't afraid to let the Lord go before him, and the Lord slew Goliath. And of course, Goliath is representative of a gigantic foe. Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, and how they're presenting all of this Kraken is like a giant like Goliath. And the thing that David did was that he let the Lord go before him in battle, and the Lord took care of Goliath. And David was there, and he was a part of it. So I just think that it's a very interesting comparison, as I said, and I hope you find this fascinating. So this is just what the Lord was showing me, this comparison between the thousands and the 10,000s, and Saul, David, B, and Trump. Very interesting. And of course, Trump fighting Goliath with the Lord going before him. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, give me a thumbs up, support my channel, support my fund, read the book about the testimony that the Lord gave me through the Holy Spirit, the almond tree, Aaron's rod, the Messiah, King of Israel, and you will be completely blessed forever by that masterpiece. And it is a masterpiece because it came from the Holy Spirit, and it's about to reveal the Messiah to Israel in the last days. Very interesting, don't you think?